Howdy and welcome to the Sick II walkthrough. This is Mike Peaslee. I'm here with Gregg Stevens.
Hello.
And we're going to check out some of the content and features of the Sick II hybrid SFX and instrument sample library, and also talk a little bit about the history behind it and how it came to be.
So why did we want to do this library?
So the reason we wanted to do this was just to whip up a quick kind of Halloween-themed, but generally just a horror effect and instrument library. But more than anything, just an excuse to go back out in the field and put ourselves in harm's way, digging around in abandoned military installations.
One of our favorite pastimes.
One of our favorite pastimes. So pretty much just any derelict or abandoned building, we kind of just like to hang out in. So nothing like kind of fills your lungs like the sweet sting of asbestos and other horrible things. So with this library, there was no exception. We headed up to our one of our favorite little locations. It's actually a whole region just chock full of fortifications, some of them dating back to Civil War era. Some of them are actually pretty accessible. You can just kind of walk right in, and then suddenly you're underground. They're just old, labyrinthine kind of concrete structures with obviously no lights.
And obviously very haunted.
Quite haunted. I mean, there were probably wars we don't know about that occurred here at some point in the San Francisco
horrible
area.
Experiments, I'm sure.
Yes, and horrible experiments, yes. Because pretty much anytime you have any sort of military base, we're pretty much dead certain, based on what we've seen on TV, that they all are used for horrific experiments and just completely evil things.
Yeah, things are never checked with the military, of course. They just have free reign. No one ever knows what's going on. There's just always these crazy experiments happening. That's what TV would lead me to believe.
Yeah, pretty much every site's a black site.
Yeah.
And every soldier's a super soldier, and everybody's been genetically experimented on. Because that's science, and that's just how it goes.
So we need to go there and capture some of that, or at least the spirit of it.
The spirit,
quite literally.
Trap it on our little recording devices, which are have been, developed through centuries of research to be able to capture the spirit of all that comes before it. Pretty much like a camera can steal your soul. The same thing is true about a recorder. I mean, it's just common knowledge.
Right.
We went digging around there, and then also toured around a World War II era decommissioned warship, and which is also
What's its
supposed
nickname?
to be the Ghost Ship.
Oh, wow. That seems to go perfectly with our theme.
Why? How strange. And we just kind of went tromping around on the decks and recording light hums and general ambiances. And at one point, a ghost actually literally tried to kill us when, the ship, is full of bunk areas. The bunks for the soldiers or the seamen are kind of mixed in with, because it's not a very open space. They have these lockers next to their bunks, and one of them popped open as we approached it. We tried to narrowly escaped getting bumped by a locker, which could have caused us to trip and hit our heads and get an infection and then eventually die, maybe potentially sooner than otherwise. Which I mean, I think it was a pretty harrowing experience, honestly. I mean, let's not kid ourselves.
And it's well planned out. They're very malicious in that way.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be I'll kill you right now, but I'm gonna get you eventually.
Eventually, yeah. I mean, it's a long-term plan they have to the ghost to make you also become a ghost at some point. Science will never know.
Yeah, we haven't gotten that far yet, but so what did we actually end up getting?
We got a lot of creepy spaces. We got typically we ran around hitting things like we like to do and recorded that. A lot of Rust-style percussion, metallic impacts, concrete impacts, stomps, scrapes in these locations, kind of like capturing also a little bit of the ambience. Of course, the natural acoustics of this space. And then, obviously, EVPs. We were able to isolate some actual spiritual phenomenon on tape and zoom and enhance to the point that it's you can clearly hear the evil within the signal.
Yeah. They go through a lot of trouble to reach us. They know that we have these types of recorders and the various programs we use to be able to extract their audio. Rather than just speaking to us directly, of course, they make subtle, scuffling, just wispy little sounds that once we enhance, then we know what they're
clearly you can
saying.
hear it's a voice. It's
because I guess they're just kind of shy or something. They can't just flat out talk to us. But
yeah,
and I respect that.
Maybe they're just choosy. You know, it's like the
So like, I'm not going to waste my spiritual breath on you unless you're going to record this because this is important. What I have to say is important.
very important. Like yes and no and
Get out.
get out and die. Like, what are you gonna do about it, Ghost? Well, I don't know. I mean, do we really know that ghosts haven't killed people? Do we really know that?
According to the statistics,
80% of all hauntings result in
they're
some sort of
hostile in nature.
hostile,
Yeah, and
yeah.
there's like just hundreds of injuries and dozens of deaths
every
every
year.
year.
Every year, yeah. Just in our area.
Right. I wonder how many people I passed on the street today that will be dead by the end of the day due to unexplained phenomena.
I mean, it's probably dozens.
Yeah.
Probably. So don't get too attached. But then again, maybe because they'll come back and haunt you.
Right. Yeah, it happened to them, so they want it to happen to other people, and so on and so forth. A vicious cycle.
Yeah, vicious. So we got a bunch of scary sounds, and of course, you know the bunker being used for horrific experiments was therefore full of zombies, like literally just completely packed full of them. So we recorded them. They were very polite and
Yeah, good people, really.
good people. They were totally down. They signed all the release forms and were more than willing to perform. Some of the content we actually got, we did bust out some old recorders, some old really, really warped and heat damaged tape. We were able to kind of cull some interesting things off of. And
Let's get down to it and play some of this stuff.
Let's play some
I'm
of
dying
this.
to hear it.
So let's. I mean, you've been staring this whole time at the Sick II Percussion All preset, and that's pretty much what it sounds like. It's got all the major percussion elements spread out over the key range. So it's basically set up to almost like an epic percussion patch. So you can do instantly kind of complex stuff. Yeah. So let's just jump right in. So playing up the key range.
Really cool variety. Different sounds.
A bunch of individual scrapes and slides up the top, and then individual stomps and impacts that don't really go in a round robin set because they're unique, but are kind of cool in and of themselves. And there's a lot of dynamic range on this stuff too.
Mike, did you realize that there's 13?
What's that?
Did you realize that there's 13 different articulations with round robins?
Yeah,
And then
13.
there's a bunch of singles.
We got round robin and a lot of dynamic. And the other cool thing about this stuff is when you record harder sounds, you actually lose a lot of the bottom end because you kind of run out of dynamic range. But with this with these sets, because we want to be a little bit delicate so that the roof didn't cave in and or we didn't break anything, we recorded much more delicate sounds. But that brings out all this bass energy that you kind of normally don't get in percussion. So you get these incredible sub bass effects. And so you can get some, and with the stepping knob, you can go pretty deep and get some really cool kind of post-apocalyptic kind of industrial effects. Lots of bass. And back to top. And then if you really gotta get into the front panel controls, you can really start to shape some cool things out of the sounds. These are-
One cool thing I think is with most of these samples, well, probably with all of them, you can really hear the space that we're in, which is a cool space that we wanted to capture, obviously. It's a great natural reverb, but if you want to try to make it a little more dry, you can crank the release down. And you can keep the sound somewhat natural, but just sort of crump the room a bit.
Or
and
even
then
go,
even add your own reverb.
yeah,
Or go
extreme.
totally crazy. Down to blips and bleeps almost.
And or kind of go the other way.
Yeah, turn to more ambient.
And even use offset. And one thing we definitely kind of bring up is because we went out into really unique spaces, there's no way to contain what's going on, but a lot of it actually adds a lot of character to it. So like the old hums, transformer hums and light hums in some of the spaces in the warship, and then in the bunker a lot of actually strange interference we were actually picking up from a nearby radar station infected the sound in a way that we didn't expect, but gave a lot of life. So in a lot of ways, it brings this tonality to the sound, and we think adds a lot. It's different than, say, some of the more, I wouldn't call, say, Rust's content sterile, but it was in a much more controlled space. We were able to kind of take over the space and completely isolate the sounds we were after. Where in this, we're getting a lot of the rawness of the location.
Yeah, and that, as you said, that was kind of part of it. We intentionally didn't hold still as quietly as possible, so you hear tiny little gritty scrapes of us moving. You just hear the various elements.
Yeah,
It's
kind
just
of almost
subtle movement and stuff.
almost. I mean, the whole point was almost to impart the potential for EVP in all of this stuff. So when you
Yeah.
play a whole series together, you get that tapestry that weaves itself together, that takes it away from just these distinct percussive elements. So it kind of weaves together into, I think, in a kind of a live quality to them, and a little less sequenced. Really, really happy with the way it turned out for our goal, which was just a kind of a smash and grab, see what we could find in these environments, kind of collection, and bring an entirely different kind of take on this. And the same thing kind of came about in our EVP, the ambiences, the drones, the pads that we recovered scientifically, of course, without any manipulation or doctoring at all.
Right.
Totally all authentic stuff. But just the amount of kind of character and life that they have, whether you're looking for something that's kind of like Exorcist style ramblings, or more straightforward demonic or creature sounds. Let's check out a few more of the percussion presets before we move on to that ambient stuff. But in the individual percussion presets, we spread a single articulation over the whole range, so you can play in a more tuned way. And some of this stuff actually works almost like kind of dark tuned percussion.
Yeah, the sounds are rather complex most of the time, so it's hard to really dial in a single note, but you can definitely use them in a tuned context.
Yeah. And let's get through some of the others.
And with, let's see, you're on 6.
6.
On the other cool thing that we haven't talked about is the tone effects
Oh yeah.
script.
Yeah, so we have, as usual, we got the complete sound shaping features that you can get in the tone effects script. First, there's the EQ.
I mean, it's pretty straightforward. You've got low, mid, and high frequencies that you can adjust plus or minus 18 dB. and we've exposed the mid frequency that you can adjust all the way. But like, why limit it? So you can, and you can always quickly attach something like the cutoff to the mod wheel simply by
Go to the auto
right-clicking
menu.
on it.
Oh,
I
yeah.
just right-click, learn MIDI CC, and move my mod wheel.
Meow, meow, meow.
And you can get cool effects that way. You can do that with any of the parameters, any of the knobs, I think. Not sure about the buttons, I think. all of
I
those.
think not in Contact 3, but in Contact 4 you can.
Right.
That's another thing to bring up. We programmed this library in Contact 3 so that it was maximally accessible to everybody that we could bring it to. So yeah, you can use this library in Contact 3 or Contact 4 or Contact 5, but it has to be the full retail version.
So
Let's
delay and a stereo thing, but yeah, the reverb's kind of
the go-to. What we have in here is our this is usually we've got a little collection of custom impulses that we've created, either in real locations we recorded at, or just through sound design, or a mixture of the two. And we got a couple of classic sort of spaces. Turn this off. The cool thing about the reverb is you can really kind of play with the size. Wait for it to load.
Yeah, there's one thing to be aware of when adjusting the size. It doesn't always update right away, or maybe even at all. If you play with the knob a little bit, it does go from 50% up to 150%.
But Contact doesn't always do the best job at updating without any kind of latency.
Yeah, it's certainly not a parameter to update in real time while you're playing, even though you could automate it.
Yeah. Generally, I'd say
it's pretty processor intensive function, I guess. So,
but pretty much the only things that ideally you would want to automate in real time here is the dry and wet. Anything else is going to potentially hit the CPU and cause popping and things like that, regardless of your system setting. It's just kind of a fact of life with the convolution effect. Although we do really like the sound of it.
Yeah, and all of these impulses are available if you have your own convolution reverb that you'd prefer to use outside of Contact.
Yeah, you'll find them in the impulses folder.
You can just throw them into whatever plugin you have.
Yeah, and hopefully what we do is also encourage people to experiment on their own with unconventional impulses. For example, the iron door, we recorded at another bunker, and it's literally derived from the sound of an iron door. And then another one.
You can almost create ambiences with some of these.
Yeah, quite easily. And speaking of ambiences, actually, let's check out what we actually tried to create some impulses for this library, but using old equipment to try to capture the flavor of the old tape. And basically, because of the inability for the machine to produce a stable playback rate, it just
record rate, right?
Or record, yeah. It basically just warbled, and it was just a mess. But we got some pretty interesting results, which actually have a bit of usability quite on their own.
pretty amazing if you crank the stepping down pretty far. Strange sounds.
And yeah, what do we got? So that, and then another cool thing is the footsteps, which are pretty handy, just in general, just footsteps. Which actually are pretty good percussion.
Like people stomping around.
Yeah. Yeah, so we got lots of different kinds of percussion, and then getting into the ambiences, we've got our wonderful bunker zombies who would like to pay you a visit.
A lot of different interesting characters in there.
Just a room full of zombies. But honestly, where it really starts to sound pretty cool is... Or go even lower. Good times.
Yeah.
And we got now let's get into some of the soundscapes.
Hey, Mike, I couldn't help but notice that random offset button. What does that do?
Random offset balances between. It allows you to either fix the offset or just randomize it. So every time you play the note, you get a little bit of round robin. Or you press that button and suddenly you have absolute control. Which can be really handy if you're doing some very specific sound design versus if you just want some kind of live flavor behind what you're doing.
And as you had talked about before with the demo that you did, each render was different because some of the ambiences were with the random offset.
Exactly. Yeah. When you leave that on, you can get some. I mean, it's almost like you don't know what you're going to get when you render, which is kind of cool. Just remember, if you want to control it, make sure to flip that thing off. And use the offset control to shape exactly where you want the sounds, play back from. Some of these that are more kind of tonal, it doesn't really matter so much. But some of these where they have these kind of flavorful kind of textural elements in there, you kind of want to know what's going to happen next. And let's try some of these others. Oh, and some of our good friends, the EVPs.
Some careless person left an _01 in there.
Oops. And of course they are noisy because they're supposed to be noisy. Because they're EVPs. Because the ghosts,
yeah, they were.
The ghosts speak they hang out in the noise floor. That's where they belong.
Exactly. The only way we could get to those sounds is by cranking up the samples so loud that then you can hear what they were saying in there.
Yeah.
Some of them are very specific. Others, you're not quite sure what they're trying to say there.
Get out. I never was able to figure out what that one said. So yeah, just little bits of flavor to sprinkle into things and see if people notice. Frantic voices.
Is this more Chris flavor or is this you?
This one was me. This was just some weird things I was able to derive from the tape.
Yeah, it sounds like it's got that sped up tape sound in there. It's really cool.
And then this is one of Chris's flavors.
Like.
And yeah, these things layer really well. Different, obviously.
Yeah. Skip ahead to Moaning Sun. I really like that one. Aside from layering, it's one of those patches that sounds way different in the low register as opposed to the high register. You can get, I guess that is part of the layering. You could do some incredible things just with this patch, but
yeah,
it gives a way different flavor, I feel.
Yeah,
super
really.
Low as opposed to super high.
Huh?
Of course, this is derived from our PKE.
Yeah,
readings that we were taking.
PKE device.
Yeah,
which you can kind of hear of in the video. Micro Crescetti.
Oh yeah.
Lots of neat stuff. Some cool different. Some of these more musical, and some of them just pure creepiness. This one's kind of also derived from tape manipulation.
Mike, I couldn't help but notice the X blend knob. What does that do?
Oh, why, that does this. Just allows you to blend between layers. A few of these different ambiences have multiple layers.
Yeah, so whenever you see the X blend or X fade, whatever it's called in that particular patch, that's when you know that ambience will have at least two different layers to blend between.
Yeah. This one's kind of interesting. Just lights and electrical transformers always tend to be at a specific frequency in it. It's kind of a weird mix between heavy and light electrical hums.
Kind of an interesting organ-like sound. I really like it.
Yeah. Here's one kind of angelic quality. What else we got in here? Swarm. This one's kind of actually kind of disturbing.
Yeah,
There's
the only thing we haven't talked about is the Uberpeggiator, but I think that's standard. Is it talked about in Glass Beach? Can't remember.
I don't think it was. Let's just bring it out and show it off. So Chris built this really cool script called the Uberpeggiator, which it's kind of just like a catch-all arpeggiator system. It allows you to do just a ridiculous number of things. And then you can obviously play around with And in the default mode, it just takes the velocity you played at versus and sequences them in the order that you played them, following the rhythm that you give it. But you can also use the table velocities to dial it in and go up to 32 steps, and it'll just basically follow that velocity instead of the ones you played. And then you can also give it kind of a direction. So the notes that you play, it'll. There are different ways you can tell the Uberpeggiator to interpret them in terms of the order you want them to play in.
And how many hits per note, right?
Yeah, how many hits. And then, random. So, and, yeah, you can give it a little swing. And, yeah, it's generally just a very handy little device. You can kind of experiment with all the different settings here to create some unique effects.
What other modes are there? I see that you're set to on right now, but it looks like there's other things that can be...
Other modes? Hold. Oh, I'm not even playing anymore.
Yeah, you just started in motion.
An ad. Yep. So that's the Uberpeggiator. And this is the percussion pad. It's kind of just fun to jam around on. The stomps, actually. People have actually asked for this one. All right. I think that's about it.
That's about it.
We done explored this thing. Thanks for joining us. I'm Mike Peaslee.
I'm Gregg Stevens.
We'll see you again real soon.
Thanks for sticking around for all 3 hours of this video.